All right. Well, hello, everybody. We've got, what are all these people chiming in now? Hey, everybody. It's February 23rd. It's 6:32, and that can only mean one thing, Matilda. What does that mean?
Time for Spirit of Science.
It's time for the spirit of science. So here we are. We're at the beautiful, the wonderful Merchants House Museum on 29 East 4th Street in New York City, which is probably it's definitely Manhattan's most haunted house, but I would say it's probably the most haunted house in New York City, having been to quite a few of them, and I would say,
said so. The New York Times said so.
yeah, New York City. All
Mhm.
right, good. Well, there you go. The New York Times said it. It must be the most haunted house in New York City. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We've got a pretty good crowd tonight. Yeah, we've got at least 30 people right now. There is a chat room if people wanted to chat, and there is also a Q&A tab. So if anybody's got any questions during the show, please just type away and we'll answer them as quickly as we can. Yeah, so before we get into the show tonight, Matilda has something that she would like to pass along to you guys regarding the Merchant's House.
Yeah, are you gonna put the link in the chat?
I'm gonna, yeah.
Okay,
There's nobody in it yet.
okay. So I have a spiel. As many of you know, for the last 12 years, the Merchant's House has been fighting proposed development next door, this side, construction that is guaranteed to cause irreparable damage to the landmark building and will force the museum to close to the public for at least 2 years. In December, in a shocking betrayal, the Landmarks Preservation Commission recklessly voted to approve the development. So can I just interrupt?
Yeah.
We're the landmark, not that building.
Yes.
So why didn't the Landmarks Preservation Commission vote to protect us?
I don't know. I was speaking to Emily
Mm-hmm.
right before you came, and the way she was explaining to me, I mean, it was like a 30-second conversation, but it seems like, all the architects and engineers that the Merchants House has brought in to examine the plaster, and I mean, if there's construction goes on next door, the ceiling will collapse.
Yeah.
Onto the floor here. And greasing the crack, yeah. But I guess they want to use their own, or maybe they don't trust the engineers that the Merchants House had brought in.
Uh-huh.
So because they've had engineers come in and say, yeah, it should be safe, and then it's not safe. So maybe me not trying not to be cynical, they might be looking to say, we just want to make sure what they're saying is true. But they passed this thing,
Right.
So,
Right.
I don't know. Just
Well, I want to say it's a sign of corruption in the administration in the city.
Yeah,
would not be the first time. This disastrous vote is a warning to every other landmark in New York City. If this can happen to the Merchant's House, the very first building in Manhattan designated a New York City landmark in 1965, and it is not only an exterior landmark, it is an interior landmark, then every landmark in New York is at risk. We have just launched a letter writing campaign to urge the Adams administration to step in to save the Merchant's House. Please take 30 seconds to send a letter at the easy link on our website at merchantshouse.org. And please share this message with your friends and neighbors. Together, we can save the Merchant's House. And Dan is putting the link in the chat.
Yes, I will. As soon as I figure out how to do that. Hey, Ursula. Hey, Stan. Yeah, so, terrible things going on, and we really need to do this. I'll get the link in there as we're going along in the show. So, we got to send these letters. I think just in one day or 2 days, there's 1,300 letters have gone out already.
It really
so
makes a difference.
And it's quick. I sent mine. It really honestly takes about 30 seconds of your time. So you're sitting on the train, or you're sitting at home and don't know what to do on a Friday night. Hey man, instead of listening to Matilda and I for the next 30 seconds, go ahead and type. In fact, you know what? Matilda,
Yeah.
Say hello to everybody, and I'm going to figure out how to put this
hey everybody,
damn link in here. but tonight's topic will be
We're going to talk about how
Thank you.
we prepared for our investigation at Poe Cottage.
right. We did an
And-
investigation. Okay, I just in one of the chat areas, yeah, in the chat webinar chat, I just put the link to everyone. So
It's just 2 clicks.
Yep.
Click on the link and then click on the letter.
click on the link and click on the letter. So and
Yeah, the
please-
letter's like pre-filled out, right?
Yes, it's
Yeah.
pre-filled
Yep.
out. You
Yep.
don't actually have to write the letter.
right.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so if somebody can just shoot me a message that you can see the link and the link is working.
Yeah,
And
it came through.
Or
Yep.
oh, it did? All right, cool. And we've got the remote Dr. Lee, who is in, where are you now, Dr. Lee?
In Detroit.
You're in Detroit. So so Lee will be also joining the conversation from far away.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we investigated the Poe Cottage up in the Bronx a couple weeks ago.
But we're not talking about the results.
No, we're not
Because we
talking
don't
about the
have
results.
everything yet. And on the show, when we talk about the results, we're hoping to have a very special guest who is with us.
Right. Kathy Nadell, who's a psychic medium, and
Mm.
she's been to the Merchant's House with me once, and is really a pretty spectacular medium. She's cool. She's fun to be around.
yeah,
So
she's great.
she was really connecting that evening. So we'll talk about what we did to prepare and what to do to prepare for a paranormal investigation in general. Because I got a feeling a lot of the people that are here tonight are paranormal investigators, or at least paranormal investigator enthusiasts. So
And it is, you can do one on your own. It doesn't take a lot. I mean, the more equipment you have is better, right? But really, right? I mean, anybody can do one.
yeah, I mean, you've probably done a paranormal investigation and didn't even know you were doing a paranormal investigation. There's no right way to do a paranormal investigation. There's plenty of wrong ways to do a paranormal investigation, I think. But there's no real right way. I mean, whatever way is going to work for you, and if you're getting results, keep doing it the way that you're doing it. And but there are a lot of things to try and avoid.
Yeah,
So,
what are the wrong things?
well, let's start from the very, very beginning.
Okay.
When you maybe starting out in a group or starting out wanting to do this as a hobby, you got to learn all you can about parapsychology, not necessarily the paranormal world. If you're going to do a ghost investigation, you focus on ghosts and the sort, not Bigfoot. But parapsychology is the study of 3 things. And Lee, you could jump in here because Lee is a scientist, a real scientist. I'm not. It's the study of mind-matter interaction. It's the study of ESP, and it's the study of ghosts. And what do they call that? Survivalism. And does consciousness survive bodily death? And if it does, can we interact with it? Can we communicate with it? So if you're going to start doing paranormal investigations, you got to really bone up on those 3 things, which is very easy to do. You can go to the Rhine Research Center online. You can buy any book by Lloyd Auerbach, and he will, my mentor, and that's how I started out. And Lloyd is the man. He's forgotten more than most people will know about paranormal investigating. So you got to know what you're doing before you go in. And before you go in, if you're going to do a location, you have to have permission. You have to have permission. You can't walk into a place and start investigating, and no one's going to know what you're doing there. They could call the authorities. You might offend some people. I know people go in to investigate graveyards. Let me tell you something. If I saw somebody with a K2 meter around my dad's tombstone, there'd be big problems. So get permission and understand where you're going, and try not to be selfish and just go there for your good time, because you're affecting other people.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I think this is kind of interesting.
Okay.
When you bring a medium to a location you're investigating, the medium should not know anything about the location.
Correct.
Right? But how much research should you do?
Yeah, you know,
before you go.
sure, you should do is as much as you can and as much as you're comfortable with. When I go on it, when I was with a group, I'm not with a group, but when I was with a group, I would like to know, maybe somebody else would like to know everything, and then I don't want to influence anybody, so I would keep that to myself and not tell the rest of the group. If it was something I thought
Yeah,
that they should know, I would, of course, say if it was dangerous or, be careful with this or whatever. But I wouldn't want to influence somebody, and I wouldn't want to say, these people are seeing shadow people in the hallway, because somebody in the group will see a shadow person in the
right,
hallway.
right.
I would rather hear somebody in the group say, you know what, I just saw a shadow person in the hallway and they didn't know that that was happening in the house, because that makes it a little bit more credible.
Well, that's so interesting, because that brings up things that have happened here at the Merchant's House
Mhm.
when visitors have reported, oh, the docent in period clothing up in the bedroom level, and it's like, well, we don't have those.
Yeah.
So like, but they didn't know, they weren't
Right.
aware that we didn't have that.
Right. So, it's good to know, and especially like the Merchant's House is a historic home,
Mhm.
and it's a museum. So, I got permission from people a long, long time ago to come in here and do this, but it's not a private home. You're dealing with a sort of a different animal.
Mhm.
Nobody is sleeping here. Well,
Right,
I've slept here a
right.
couple times, and we know some people that have slept here a couple times. Um, this isn't anybody's home other than a Treadwell's and the spirits that come in and have a visit. When I started investigating the Merchant's House, I tried to find as much as I could about the Merchant's House out, and I found it all online. But the first time I brought a medium here, Richard Scholler, who's a dear, dear friend.
And we had him on the show.
He's been on the show, and he's going to be on the show again.
Mhm.
And I was actually talking with him last night. He said hi to everybody. He didn't know when I spoke to him about it, and I didn't know Richard very well. He didn't know if we were uptown, downtown, east side, west side. He was coming in from Long Island, from Huntington, Long Island, and I just met him at Penn Station. And the only question Richard asked me was, is this a private home or a business? And I didn't know how to answer him. I said, well, it was a private home and it's kind of a business now. So I didn't really know how to answer him. I said, well, Richard, why do you ask? And he said, well, how do I dress?
Oh,
He's kind of a formal guy.
Uh-huh.
And I said, well, I don't believe there's any air conditioning. That was in the summer. So yeah, you don't want to give away, especially the Merchant's House, where and especially now my name's been attached to it for so long. Anybody could, if you look me up on the internet, something about the Merchant's House is going to pop up. So if I
Right.
tell a medium, I want to take you to a place, they can look it up and go, oh, it's a pretty good bet that he's taking me to the Merchant's House.
But Kathy didn't know.
Kathy didn't know.
Kathy did not know we were going to.
No, and I've told little white lies to people saying, I'm dealing with a couple in a brownstone,
Yeah,
and then we come here.
right.
Um,
And I just want to say another thing about
Yeah.
Poe Cottage. I don't know how many people have ever actually been to Poe Cottage, but it's the location of Poe Cottage is the last place in the world you would expect to find Poe Cottage.
Yeah.
It's like in the
It's in
middle
the
of
Bronx.
Fordham Road in
Yeah.
the Bronx, in the middle of a park.
right.
Right, but it's not like for the Merchant's House or other historic homes in New York City, you could say, oh, I believe it's there, because that
Mhm.
makes sense that it would be there. It makes absolutely no sense that Poe Cottage is where it is. So I can guarantee you that as she was approaching it,
She went,
she
oh,
had no idea where she was.
Yeah,
or
yeah, I
why
just,
she was there.
I didn't give her the address until about 2 hours before we were meeting there.
Mhm.
And because she lives in Yonkers.
Okay.
So it wasn't a far ride for her. And she gave me a lift home. You know how long it took me to get home that night? It took me like 15 minutes to get home.
Uh-huh.
It was such a breeze. Yeah, so that was the Poe Cottage and the historic site, and Kathy didn't know where we were going. But now when you're dealing with, like I say, a private home, it's a whole different animal. You got to deal with personalities. You got to deal with people that, they're letting strangers, they're letting ghost hunters
Yeah.
into their house. So you really have to understand your audience, and you're there on their turf, and you have to be polite, and you have to, I've been with people who said, you know what, I'm kind of freaking out and I don't want you guys here. And investigators are arguing with them. No, I'm not leaving. I was like, I had to grab people by the collar and say, no,
Wow.
we got to go. They don't want us here. We're
Yeah.
trespassing now.
Yeah.
Another good thing to have would be a liability waiver. And just in case, you fall down the steps and break your leg, or you knock over something precious in their house, a Dale Chihuly piece of glass, and you know, which has happened, and you want to just cover your butt, and you want the homeowner or the historic location to be covered as well. You want to waive your liability. If I fall down your
Did
steps,
you have a waiver in place, Dan, when that happened?
Yes.
Oh, wow, nice.
Yeah, and I have a waiver, I have a standing waiver with the Merchants House from like 14, 15 years ago.
Yep.
In perpetuity. And you can find liability waivers online, or if you got access to I had a friend of mine's an attorney, and he wrote a quick one up, and it just covers everybody, and it's a good thing to have.
So what about if you're gonna do it at like, I mean, and people do this all the time, it's on YouTube, like they go and stay on the Queen Mary in one of the rooms, or you're going to a hotel and you're gonna stay, you request the haunted room.
Right, well, a lot of
Do
those
you have
places
to tell the hotel management that you're going in?
to do an investigation.
Yeah, if you're paying to stay in that particular room.
Yeah, I mean, you probably should, and odds are, if it's a haunted place and they promote haunted events like the Stanley Hotel or I think it's the Shanley Hotel in upstate New York, they actually have you sign a waiver to stay there.
Oh, really?
And which I think is,
because it's so scary.
yeah, apparently, but I think that's part of the allure.
Yeah.
Yes, and maybe we should do that here at the Merchants House. Anybody that comes in for a ghost tour, they have to sign a waiver that they won't sue us for being too scared.
Or fainting.
Or fainting, and yeah, correct. But and those are just sort of the, sorry, Matilda, those just kick Matilda under the table here. And those are just sort of the boring things that you have to get out of the way before you actually can start conducting a paranormal investigation. Now, as
We did we have a waiver with Poe Cottage?
I don't believe so.
We did
No, I don't
not.
think so. It's good. Good, nothing happened.
Yeah. Oh, and that's another thing, when you put it in there, you got to put in your little contract that if you do catch something amazing, it belongs to both of you.
Oh, that's interesting, right?
Yeah. I mean, imagine, Mr. Treadwell walks in here and we're able to record him, and we've got definitive proof that consciousness survives bodily death, and we become rich and we don't want to share it with anybody. That wouldn't be cool. Or the Merchants House could say, you know what, it's ours.
Right.
And get out of here, Matilda, Dr. Lee, and Dan, and I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder if there's any there's precedence along those lines, kind of on like the treasure hunting front, where a lot of times they're people that even if they have permission to like look for treasure in certain areas off the coast of Florida, whatever, they find it, then like the state starts debating, oh, that's ours, even though we said you could go there. And I wonder if there's some equivalents precedents with that kind of thing in terms of ghost hunting stuff.
Right. It's funny too. In cases, there have been cases that have gone to court regarding ghosts. Yeah. There was a great case in upstate New York where people were buying a big, beautiful, like Victorian house right on the Hudson River, and the couple were walking around, and they call them stigma laws, and if anybody was raped or murdered,
yes, if anyone died in the home,
you have to acknowledge that now. And that came out of, I believe, this case where the couple was walking around, and somebody said, "Oh, you bought the big old haunted house." And
oh, I think I heard about this.
Yeah, and the wife was like, "Wait a minute,
yeah,
I'm moving into a haunted house. I want nothing to do with that." And the realtor and the real estate didn't tell us anything about that. And then with the court, they got the deposit back.
Yeah.
So
now you have to disclose if you're selling a haunted house.
Yeah, stigma laws. So we got, let's see, Robert Dowling. He already sent his letter. Maureen Norton, she is going to send her letter. People are going to send the letters. Thank you guys. And look at that. Let's see what people are holding them. We're holding them.
Well, so let's talk. So you're all set. You've done your research. You've gotten permission. You're about to begin your investigation.
And you got to start getting your people that you're going to go with together now, and this is real important. And I've run into
the
this.
Right people.
You got to have the right people, and if you're doing this and you've got friends, you already know them, and you want somebody you can spend the night with that is going to be cool and fun. You have to look at I would always go to the location first before you do the investigation, just to kind of check it out. And one of the little tricks I like to do when I go in, especially if it's a private home, is I'll go in and I'll look if they have their movie collection out, or I look at what kind of books they're reading. And, you know, if you start seeing, you know, Ghost Hunters seasons 1 through 12, you're there for their entertainment,
Okay.
you know, and, or if
Yeah.
they've got, you know, a bunch of scary movies, The Exorcist, that you can kind of tell, I bet they're worried about demons, or I bet they're about that. So it's just a little tip to go in there and kind of scope out the place that you're going to for yourself.
Did that ever happen, Dan, where you went to a place beforehand and just like, okay, these people are obviously just
I went to a place that had a bunch of, they had Ghost Hunters season 1 through whatever the last season was, and they had a speaker behind a wall in their basement of a little baby crying.
Oh.
And it sounded like a speaker behind a wall.
They set it up like specifically for you coming over. They're like, let's break a hole in this wall and plaster over it.
No, they didn't have to break a hole in the wall. They just had to like pop out, you know, it was paneling.
Okay,
paneling. So they just needed to pop out one piece, and they Velcroed.
Did they do that to try to trick you?
No, they said they didn't. They played jokes on everybody.
Speaker behind the wall.
Yeah. No, they said they played jokes on everybody, but it's a real haunted house and everybody knows it, but it doesn't always happen all the time. So they just wanted to like freak their friends out and see what I thought.
Like, what did
I left 5 minutes later. I was
Really?
like, I'm
You were
wasting my
like, no,
time.
no,
Yeah, you're wasting my time.
Wait, so how did you find out? Like, did
Because
they
it sounded like a speaker behind the freaking paneling.
So
And
did
it
you just
was
ask? Like,
vibrating, so I took my EMF meter out and found the magnet, found the speaker. Speakers are magnets.
That's funny.
And I had another time. we went to a house in Bayside, and it was something was going on at this house for sure. It was 3 girls that were living there, and it was a nice house. And there was a murder by cop, a suicide by cop had happened there, where a guy went in years ago, held the cops at bay and pulled a gun on one of them. The cop, of course, had to shoot him. There was still the blood stain in the closet. He landed in the closet, and there was still a blood stain on the floor. And the gun wasn't loaded, you know. So he just wanted to commit suicide. And so we were in there investigating. They were having lots of things happening. And one of the things that we used to do would be to leave the house unattended. And that
No.
and leave the house unattended and go to a diner and get a burger or whatever, just for like an hour, and then come back.
But you know what? You did that here, and you recorded that demonic sound.
Yeah.
That is the most frightening sound I think I have ever heard.
Yeah, creepy.
Really?
But we went, when we came back from the diner, with the people that called us in, and one of the girls wasn't there. She said she was too freaked out. She was scared. She was staying at her boyfriend. So we come in, unlock, the homeowner opens the door, and everything on the first floor has now been turned upside down. All the chairs are like flipped upside down, and the seats are on the table. All the pictures on the mantles were all turned backwards. Everything, it was just turned upside down. The hair on the back of my neck went up as soon as I saw that, but it's obviously been faked. And the girl screamed and started to cry. And I said, look, somebody's playing a joke on you. She goes, how do you know? I said, well, because if they're not, this is the most haunted house that I've ever seen in my entire life. And so we checked the cameras. We had video running, and it was her roommate and her boyfriend came in to play a joke.
And they didn't notice, you know, like the 20 cameras set up on tripods all around the room.
Yeah, I guess not, or they didn't care.
Yeah,
but,
they thought it was off or something.
Yeah, they thought it was fun, and it was just such a huge waste of time, because even if you collected something really cool, and got a nice EVP or a cool picture, throw it out, because now it's useless.
Tainted.
So yeah, waste of time.
The sample is tainted, Dr. Lee.
Dr. Lee, tainted.
Compromise.
But
I like the speaker story.
Pardon me?
I like the speaker story the most.
Yeah. No, don't leave. Try and stop me. And
so what kind of equipment will people want to bring? From the very most basic, like you know, there's apps on the phone, or any of those.
Don't use apps on your phone.
Okay. The one that shows the stick figures.
The SLR cameras or SLR cameras those, those do exactly what they're supposed to do, but they're not finding ghosts.
tricking
The
you.
apps on the phones, again, it's all entertainment stuff. And, if people figured out how to communicate with consciousness to survive bodily death, you're not going to find it in the app store.
Right,
And,
right.
it's not going to be that easy. I would go
Or
with,
that cheap, 99 cents, $4.99.
yeah. And, you have no control over those. And, my issue with those is who loaded up the words, and what is triggering? They're basically just random event generators that are just spitting out a word every once in a while. And people really focus on like the negative words. If somebody says suicide, it's suicide, but nobody has a problem when it says butterfly or
Yeah.
lollipop, and
Right.
and nobody gives that any kind of significance. It's only the scary.
Although, yeah, I mean, if I was making an app and I wanted it to sell and make money off it, which these people do, I
Mhm.
wouldn't make it just random. I would actually use the microphone and like when you detect a certain word being spoken,
Right.
you
Yeah. That's what I'm
or
wondering if, because,
yeah.
I don't want to say it because she'll turn on, but that Amazon woman whose name starts with A, she that recognizes your voice. So, how do we know if we're just using one of these apps and I'm going, is the spirit of my dad is here?
Yeah.
And then it recognizes dad and
Yeah,
says, "Hi, I'm
exactly.
your dad," and
Right.
and then suddenly you've got, an intelligent communication with an
So
apparition.
along those lines too, some of the devices that you can buy that are custom made by some companies, which is usually like a person like in their basement just building these things and 3D printing an
100%.
enclosure. Like a lot of times, so
In
even
their
if they
basement with a
aren't,
speaker in the wall.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, so even if those aren't explicitly made to fool people, sometimes there are some side effects. Like for instance, there's one device that's it has like several different colored tubes that light up and is supposed to indicate like that there's certain type of energy it's detecting in a certain direction or something. But it also has like an automatic recalibration that happens every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or something like that. And when it does that recalibration, like all these things light up. And so, like,
Right.
if you
They
don't
re,
know
they're
that
rebooting
exactly,
themselves.
it looks like you're constantly, getting these interesting pseudo random events. So it's, yeah.
I know a lot of people running around with those K2 meters, which can be, they cost $25, and who
Yeah.
knows, who knew talking to spirits could be so affordable.
Yeah.
But K2 meters will go off if you get a text message or an email or a phone call if you have your cell phone. And I was just for the show, we started shooting the show again late. And for the show, Paranormal Caught on Camera, Travel Channel and HBO Max. Check your local listing. And um, I'm watching one of the videos for the show, and this guy's freaking out because K2 meter's going off, and you could see the phone in his pocket, the light blinking. So he was getting a text or a phone call at the exact same time. So yeah, you got to be careful with that. And with any kind of equipment that says you're going to find ghosts with it, I'd be very skeptical of that. And what you can bring and what you should bring is a level-headed approach, an open mind on both ends of the paranormal spectrum. You're not going to be able to explain everything, and just because you can't explain something doesn't necessarily mean it's paranormal.
Along the lines of what you said you used to do, Dan, of like, you guys would all go out to the diner.
Mhm.
That's in the direction that could be, it comes down to what your goal is too. Like if your goal is like have a good time and like be scared and have stories to tell, like,
And
bring the
that's
K2,
fine.
bring all that
That's
stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But if you want to get like interesting data, honestly, what you guys did, that's along the right lines of, because once you have more people around and those people have cell phones in their pockets or walkie talkies or whatever,
Mhm.
in general, people around will contaminate the data in ways even unexpected. So
Right.
you guys leaving and going to the diner, if there was nobody else in that house and you could like lock it up, that's one of the best scenarios you can. It's less fun, it's less exciting,
Right.
but in terms of credibility of the data, it's one of the more convincing ways you can get interesting data if you just have the camera
Sure.
set up and your sensors start
And,
bleeding.
and when you do that, you need to, people bring. I can always tell when somebody is just starting out being a paranormal investigator, and I've said this often. When I first started out, I used to have to rent a van to bring all the equipment. I had
Yeah,
miles
you
of
said that
cords,
before.
cameras, and 2, 3 DVRs. stacked on top of each other and just recording whatever you can record, and you never catch anything. And it takes forever to set up and forever to break down. And so now, I'll bring a flip camera or just, a little, what were these cameras we were using? The little Yi cameras.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to leave a location and let recorders run and cameras run, the cameras are pointing at all the entries, just so I know nobody came in here and he's making those weird noises, and not necessarily looking for ghosts, but making sure nobody's coming in to contaminate any kind of data that is collected. Yeah, so be careful with the equipment that you spend your hard-earned money on. You're better off, rather than spending, a couple of $100 on some SLR camera, and that's not going to do what you think it's doing. Take all that money and donate it to the Merchants House Museum. Save $40 and buy yourself a voice recorder, because that's what's going to work. Voice recorders, just a cheap old voice recorder, a $50 voice recorder. Keep the quality in the middle or low. Don't put it on high quality.
Why?
And it seems to, the EVP seems to jump out more when it's less pristine.
Okay.
If that makes sense. For me anyway, just for me.
And also, would it be on the higher quality setting, would it filter out background noise potentially?
I don't
Which
know.
is exactly what you're looking for.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to
background
filter
noise.
anything out. And as far as equipment, as far as headphones, try and get studio monitor headphones. Headphones, when you buy them, if you buy Dr. Dre Beats or whatever, don't buy them, they're cheap. Sorry, Dr. Dre. And buy studio monitor headphones or studio monitor little bookshelf speakers, all kind of consumer grade headphones that you buy to listen to your music on the subway. They all have their levels all done already. They're all the equalizers, the bass is boosted up, the treble's boosted up. If you buy studio monitors, it's all flat. Diego.
Right.
About that.
Right.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Pardon me?
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, so the headphones that I use to listen to my EVP are studio monitor headphones. And it's so funny because the people talking, it sounds almost hollow because it's not equalized.
Yeah.
It's not made for like listening, and this is truly what it sounds like. So that's just another thing you should try and get your hands on. And again, you're talking, less than $50 to get.
So voice recorder, inexpensive headphones.
I would bring a camera, just, if you're going into a location where people say, you know what, I have seen all kinds of apparitions. Sure, bring a camera, but also bring a camera to take photographs of where your equipment is, take photographs of the people that are there, take photographs of each room that you're in, just so you know when you're talking about a room, you can go back and familiarize with what you're talking about. So when I bring my camera, I don't necessarily do it because I'm going to catch a ghost. I'm doing it because I want to make sure, was that door open when we left?
Yeah.
When we left that room, did you shut that door? We can go back and look and go, you know what? I didn't shut the door. That was me, bad. My bad. So you do that stuff to just kind of cover your butt. I would try and get my hands on a good tri-field natural EMF meter, which measures natural electromagnetic fields. You see a lot of the people running around on TV with, and Lee, I'm going to need your help with this, with EMF meters that are not direct current EMF meters, but they're alternating current, which is man-made electromagnetic fields. And so humans, Lee, do we give off an alternating current? Do we give off enough magnetism, electromagnetism to set off an alternating current electromagnetic field meter?
I don't think so. And even if there are like little micro alternating currents emitted by your cells, like them being in synchrony enough to create.
You're not going to pick it up with a millimeter. Yeah.
EMF meter is measuring what exactly?
An EMF meter. Go ahead, Lee. I'm sorry.
So yeah, I was just gonna say though, like so in the same way, like the radio in your car is connected to an antenna, right? So the
Mhm.
antenna is sticking up there, and all these radio waves that are passing through the air, they're hitting that antenna, and they can stimulate electrons, which turn into music in your car radio. So an antenna, it doesn't have to be metal. It's anything conductive that has some length to it and is sitting in a fluctuating electromagnetic field, which is
Mhm.
all around you guys, or all around all of us, right? Wi-Fi, radio signals, everything. It's microwaves, all that stuff is in the air. And
Right.
so our bodies act like antennas as well. So even though we might not be explicitly, our bodies might not be biologically generating those fields, you do absorb them because you have conductive fluid in you, and so that's an aspect. If you get close to very sensitive equipment, and you move your hand towards it or something, because your body's acting like an antenna, you're basically like helping to sort of concentrate those effects of the fluctuating fields and focus them on this sensitive equipment that's near you too. So you can have
Okay.
effects in that way.
Right.
Um,
But so what is it gonna pick up that's gonna let me know if I'm in the presence of something?
what
Gonna-
Something that you're
like-
talking about, a spirit?
Yeah,
or-
like, is it gonna pick up heat? Is it gonna pick up?
It's
Oh,
picking
well-
up, yeah, it's picking up. So that's a good question. So it also depends partially on whether this thing is moving or not, right? So when you move an antenna or anything within an electromagnetic field, you're creating, you can induce current in that. So if it's just sitting on a tripod, though, that's less likely. So that's why it's a little bit dangerous if you do have one of these EMF sensors. If you're sweeping it around with your hand, inside doing, you're actually artificially, creating some artifacts. So
Right.
yeah.
Oh, okay. Where would one get one of these devices?
You can, I'm sorry, I'm just reading some questions. You can, get them online. It's simple. I mean, I have got
Amazon?
Amazon, you can go to eBay. I've gotten all my natural tri-field EMF meters I've gotten off of eBay.
Uh-huh.
And they can be expensive, and then you can get a deal. I got one for like $77, and I think
Okay.
the first one I paid for it was over 300.
Mhm.
So, and what a natural tri-field EMF meter does, it measures fluctuations in the natural or the geomagnetic field, the Earth's magnetic field. And so if I had one sitting on the table, it would register Matilda and I, and then it would settle back down to zero, the little needle. And that would go back down to zero until the natural electromagnetic field around us changed. So if somebody walked into the room,
I see.
it would change the electromagnetic field. It would fluctuate, and it
Got
would
it.
measure that fluctuation.
I got it.
And we've gotten, I'll play it later on. I've got that great buzz audio
Mhm.
of a tri-field electromagnetic field meter running and kind of going off on command, which
So
is really
one
cool. You can't find it.
one just thing for everybody to keep in mind is, like, the tri-field meter and the EVP, audio recording devices. Like you said, if you put that tri-field meter in front of you, it's gonna make a sound because you're near it, and then it'll sort of calm down. And what's actually happening is it's basically recalibrating itself.
Right.
It's getting a new baseline. But
Right.
we're humans. We're constantly moving, whether we want to or not. We're swaying back and forth. We're breathing, whatever. So it is. Anytime you use that, or even the EVP audio recorders, or just audio recorders, you're playing like around the noise floor, right? Like, we know there are things that can inadvertently set these things off. Create some sounds that's like very low in the audio recorders, that can be picked up as something else, and with the natural EMF meter too. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because these things that we're trying to detect, we can't see them. So at least within that realm, like, they're not as obvious as the couch behind you guys, right? That's playing in the noise. And so other aspects of them also might be like within the near the noise floor. So it's not, if you are looking for something that's inherently hard to detect, like, it makes sense that you would detect it near the noise floor. And the devices that you suggested are looking in exactly that realm. So even with respect to the SLS camera and stuff like that, then, like you said, like, it's picking up all kinds of stuff, that it's picking up, like the curtains in the corner of your room that kind of look like the arms of a person, and so it's mapping out a whole person. So that's playing in the noise floor too. It's all a matter of just realizing, like, collecting the data and analyzing the background environment, like you said, the baseline, et cetera, so that you can distinguish what is just sort of random noise. It's picking something up from the background that isn't something unusual, or when it's truly something interesting. So I don't,
Right.
I wouldn't say necessarily to discount using all kinds of other equipment. It's just a matter of like how you interpret those signals, because no matter
Yeah,
what
that's
equipment you use, you're always
yeah.
kind of playing in that noise floor.
Right, right. And like Lloyd Auerbach says too, all this equipment um you're catching the wake of the boat, but not the boat.
Yeah.
And so if you're picking up some kind of strange EMF readings, there are so many different things that can cause those EMF
Yeah.
readings
Yeah.
Right.
to go off. And possibly also some kind of spirit activity, but so
Yeah.
much else
Right,
out
right.
there that it'd be ridiculous to think that's the only reason why that's happening.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm gonna play this clip real quick, and it's my friend Pi Gardner's. It's her favorite clip of that I've ever caught here at the Merchant's House, and it's a tri-field EMF meter responding to questions. And now I had this meter actually. I'm gonna way over there on the windowsill in the rear parlor. We're in the front parlor right now. And I was with my friend Garrett Husbeth, and he is since passed on. So I love listening to this clip because I love hearing him laugh. But what we were doing, we were asking if there was anywhere around to just kind of wave their hand over the box, because again, like we were saying earlier, it had recalibrated itself and gone back to zero. So we were waiting for some kind of fluctuation in the EMF around that meter. And I'm gonna play this for you, and this is what we caught that night. All right, I'm just gonna ask you one more thing. If you are in this room, and I think we all have a feeling you might be, there's a little blue box sitting on the windowsill over in the corner of the room. If you approach that little blue box, wave your hand over it, or touch that little box, it'll buzz, and we'll know that you're here. So if you can just go over and just touch that little blue box, or wave your hand over it 3 times right in a row, that would be amazing, and we'd really appreciate it. So, all right, I'll shut up then. Just getting a look. That was great. Thank you very much. Wow. You know what? Can you touch it one more time, really, really quick? Just touch it. Just tap it once. Thank you very much. Wow. Yeah, that's cool, right?
Dan, so I've heard that recording in person, and it was amazing. But just so everybody knows, from my perspective here, I'm not actually able to hear the sensor going off through the internet connection.
Oh.
So other people might not have either. Like, you hear you guys talking, and then you hear you like laughing at the end, but for some reason the sound of the
Yeah, it
sensor
might be just a little too high.
doesn't come through. Yeah.
Anybody
Anybody wondering if we're not able to play it well enough? It's mind blowing. You actually hear it pulsing exactly 3 times, and then once at the end too. If you're not able to get it to play through.
In direct response to.
Right, but does that mean that
Specific
does that mean
request.
that there was a ghost back there waving his hand over it? Or could it be some kind of intentional macro PK?
Yeah, it could have been.
So Garrett and I wanting that
things,
to go off so badly,
Yeah,
it
maybe.
went off?
Well, look, I mean, I think I've said this before. I don't think we're ever gonna have definitive proof of ghosts or life after death or anything like that, because I think that if we had definitive scientific proof that was irrefutable, life would just not be as interesting.
Yeah, you're right. I'm looking
Right?
to see if I can add.
I think it'd be a lot,
See if I can.
lot more interesting.
Well, maybe yes, maybe no, I mean, so a lot of the wonder would be gone. Like if we knew for sure that there was life after death and there was reincarnation, people would live very differently.
Yeah, I think in a more positive way. If they, you realize that we're all have a commonality between us. I've done a little research into this. So the general concept is called dualism, and that's
Mhm.
just the belief of that the minds and consciousness is separable from the body, and it's associated with a lot of positive character traits. I mean, it's the people that have that belief, which is of actually large. It's most people on Earth, honestly. So most people on Earth already believe exactly what you're saying. So if you then come up with proof showing that it's real, I don't think it's going to really change much, other than maybe make other people that don't think it's real think it's real. But that's maybe like 30-40% of the population, but a majority already believe that way.
But they believe it without proof. And I think there's a difference in believing in something, in having faith, believing in something when you don't have definitive
you know what? I
proof.
mean, I think a good example too is just, within the last couple of years, the government admitting that, they're investigating UFOs
Yeah.
and that kind of phenomena. And it doesn't seem like a big deal, you
If
know?
anything, things are more exciting because it's like, whoa, okay, there's some evidence out there that this stuff does exist. People believe that it existed before, but now it's like, for me at least, it's more exciting realizing like,
Yeah.
okay, like you can
But
actually.
why isn't this on the news every single day?
Oh,
Why
that,
isn't
I
it?
don't know. I mean, you
They
mean
said,
about the fact that the government is,
we've got UFOs and, this kind of strange phenomena is real. We don't know if it's, aliens from another life.
why is it news every single day that the single bullet theory has actually been debunked?
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, it has. There was
Yeah.
more than one assassin.
yeah. And I think the assassination committee in like 1987 or so came back and said, yeah, there were more than one person.
Yes.
There's more than one person.
Yeah.
And nobody really talks about that. And
Mhm.
it's crazy. But hopefully, the work we're doing here at the Merchant's House will change all that.
Yeah.
And Lee, speaking of equipment, Dr. Lee is we were talking about nerdy guys in their basement making equipment. And and I'm looking at you, Dr. Lee.
I don't have a basement. No
And you're not a
basements in New
nerdy
York.
guy. Lee, Dr. Lee's like one of the cooler guys I've met in a long time. But Dr. Lee has been creating his own equipment. So Lee, can you just give a quick little? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but a quick. But I'm putting you on the spot. A quick little rundown of how you decide to build something, and not the nuts and bolts part, but
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, so it's along the lines of what I was talking about before, like of how all these sensors that we could possibly use that have some possibility of detecting something interesting, right? Like audio recorders, EMF things, tri-field, SLS camera, whatever. All those are things that occasionally show weird, glitchy stuff that may or may not be something interesting, and it's a matter of like just realizing how to interpret that. And so, if you realize that, for instance, an audio recorder could be picking up like a yell of somebody that's outside, and you want to be able to prove that that's not somebody that's outside, and it's actually a spirit, you can set up the sensors in a way that it helps. It is very hard to definitively prove that it's something mysterious, but you can set up in a way that at least helps prove it to yourself, and that helps you realize, okay, there's something interesting here. I want to invest more time into this or more money and sort of go in a certain direction. So what that usually entails is really just like grids of these sensors, right? So a single audio sensor, you can get something really intriguing, but like you have the least amount of confidence that it's something legit. You get two audio sensors. Now you start being able to be a little bit more confident, right? Because if you have like them pointing in slightly different directions and one of them picks something up, one of them doesn't, and the one that picks something up is pointing towards like a brick wall that's 10 feet thick, and the other one's pointing out a window, you know that it came from that direction, and that like there's much less likely that there was somebody, behind that 10-foot thick wall saying something. So along those lines, all of these sensors, because they're playing in the noise floor, you have to get more of those sensors, an array of them, in order to get data that, even though it's within the noise floor on each individual sensor, when you couple all that data together, you can come up with an intriguing picture of like, oh, when I piece all this together, it sort of helps bring up this low signal out of the noise floor, even though on every individual sensor it's in there and sort of buried in a not that convincing way.
Mhm.
So that's really the key. Just like the more, if you a single sensor is useful for getting something interesting and getting something exciting, and getting an idea of a direction that you want to go in your research. But then just scaling up to two, you're already, twice as good. You scale to three, already three times as good. Because it all just helps you realize like localization and direction of these things that you're sensing. So those are two very important things. So if this disembodied consciousness is a localized thing, which we kind of think it is in a generally vaguely human shape or whatever, and human behavior, like that audio you just played, Dan, of like, hey, can you wave your hand? Okay, so
Right.
apparently they had a hand that had some finite shape to it, and they brought it closer to the sensor and then further away from the sensor. So that means that, if you had two of those sensors next to each other, it should then pick up, the hand passing over one and then the other. It's helping you to
Right.
find the localization and the direction of
And
those
we had that
localized.
happen up in
Yeah,
Mrs. Treadwell's room with
yeah,
you had
yeah, exactly.
a strip of lights in it, and it went
Yeah,
Yeah,
right down the line.
yeah.
yeah, exactly.
And
So meanwhile, if we only had
during
one of
COVID,
those,
right, when there was nobody else in the house, so it was
yeah,
that ideal situation that
yeah,
you're talking about.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's and yet still, even there, like there are still normal, not crazy ghost stuff ways of causing that. It's just less could have caused that than would have caused it if it was just a single sensor sitting there. If it was a single sensor sitting there and it blinked, like who knows, maybe somebody turned on the microwave on the floor below. But once you have three sensors and they go off in series like that, a microwave wouldn't cause that. And like, are there other things that possibly could have caused that? Yeah, maybe, but it's a lot less, right? There's a lot less. There's more likelihood that it was something interesting and weird, and then you can invest in more sensors, and maybe you put some more on the floor above and below, so then you can get rid of that possibility of like somebody playing with the microwave on the floor below or whatever. So
Right.
basically, yeah, once you start gaining confidence in a single sensor that there's something intriguing there, just get more of that same sensor and just distribute it around to get an idea of the localization of these possibly anomalous events.
Mhm. Yeah, what a great answer. And what's that?
Just pointing
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, that's a great answer. I'm glad I put you on the spot. There's no putting him on the spot. I am. I'm speechless, actually. I didn't know. I wasn't paying attention. But and another thing, it just while Lee was talking, it popped into my head. Harry Price. He was an investigator back in the early 1900s. Borley Rectory over in England was supposedly a very, very haunted place, and he rented Borley Rectory for a year
Mhm.
and lived there. And he investigated that place for a year with students of his and people that he was a mentor to. He investigated a place with notebooks and pencil,
Mhm.
and did an amazing job.
Well, I was gonna say too, like, you gotta really also rely on your own senses.
Mhm.
Changes in temperature, smells
Yep,
are
yep.
big,
Take
right?
notes, and if
Yeah.
you can find yourself a great reputable medium,
Mhm.
do that as well. And if anybody out there, if you need names, shoot me an email at dan@sturgisparanormal.com, and I'll point you in the right direction of some people that I've used and people that I would trust. And if I don't know anybody in your area, I might know somebody who does know somebody in your area.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, feel free to reach out to me. Totally cool.
Well, that was actually a key part of the Poe
Mhm.
investigation that we
Yeah.
did, which we'll be talking about the actual investigation on the next show,
Right.
in March.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're getting close to having to wrap it up. So that's a paranormal investigation. That's doing the investigation, and then listening to the data. So you got to have patience. I would recommend trying not to listen to 6 hours of audio in one stretch. I
Mm.
do 20 minutes, half an hour, maybe,
Yeah.
which is actually the scariest part of an investigation for me, because I'm always listening for like Dan.
Yeah.
Which knock wood, hasn't happened yet, but because I got my studio monitor headphones on, and I'm laying in bed and the lights are out, and that's the scariest part for me. But when you collect your data and you catch a really great EVP, send it out to everybody you know. We should do a show, tips for paranormal
Yeah,
investigation.
well, we gave lots of helpful tips today.
We did, but there's so many more that, I've learned through trial and error going, you know what? Keep the raw file somewhere separate. Don't even put it on your computer because you're gonna delete it.
Oh,
And then you're out of it and you've just got copies. And you don't want to, if you're sending them out to people to analyze, you don't want to send them a crappy quality clip. So little alliteration there for you, Matilda. All right.
You mentioned like some books earlier. Then there's one book that it sort of was one of the earliest books that I started with that was pretty cool, and actually ties in with what you were mentioning, Matilda and Dan, as well. Sort of like keeping pretty good notes. The book is called Hauntings and Poltergeists, and then a colon multidisciplinary perspectives.
Yep.
And it's basically each chapter is like written by a different researcher, and it's all pretty well done, like scientific investigations. And one of them is somebody, I forget who the researcher was, but they were documenting like poltergeist activity, and like what they have a diagram in there of like the layout of this warehouse in which this person works that supposedly this activity was happening around. And he was just mapping out like, when these things were happening, when things did seem to be flying around, like where they were flying around and where this person was respective to that. And it's a pretty cool map because it's kind of this blueprint diagram of the warehouse, and then you see all these lines of like object started here, object flew here, and you do sort of starting to see patterns just through these handwritten notes of like where the activity is happening with respect to the person. It does seem like it's somewhat focused around wherever this guy was within the warehouse. So yeah, it's taking
Say the
good
name of the
notes.
book and the author again?
Yeah, send me that.
Yeah, it's called Hauntings and Poltergeists, multidisciplinary perspectives, and it's by James Houran, Houran, and Rense, Rense, Lang, Lange.
Okay.
Yeah, they have it on Amazon. It's I don't know how much is it.
Okay, just a quick, Susan.
Yeah.
Susan, I hope you typed it in here, so I guess it's okay for anybody to say it. You're talking about that clip earlier that we said, I heard it. I am an atheist. I have had what I think are ghost encounters, and it's tough to square that with my disbelief in an afterlife. Thoughts? Well, yeah, I can understand how that would be square, but why does it have to be an afterlife? Why can't it just be, the continuation of life? You just don't have a body.
Right.
So I look at it like that, and I don't know if that helps Susan, but I don't think, I try and keep religion out of it.
Yeah.
And because I have had people jump all over me about religion. I'm like, yeah, you're talking to demons, you're talking to this, you're talking to that. No, you're not.
Certainly, if we can prove that consciousness survives death, that's everything to do with science. Right. It's everything to do with science and nothing to do with religion.
Right.
So maybe it actually would, Susan, could potentially be evidence
right
against an afterlife.
Okay.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
If it's still the same life.
Yeah. I always, who knows?
Just in a different form.
Yeah. If somebody tells you they have the answer, they're lying to you.
Yeah.
And we don't know yet, and that's what we're trying to figure out. And we're lucky to have somebody like Dr. Lee, who is a legit scientist, and he's into this, and he's just really I don't know. I'm always stroking Dr. Lee because it's. I am.
How does it feel to be stroked by Dick?
Yeah, it feels great.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's amazing. Take my word for it. All right. On that note, 7:30. Listen, guys, thank you for tuning in. This was a quick hour. It was a nice talk.
Please, south.org. Send the letter.
Send the letter. Click on the link, and and then Dr. Lee just put in the link. Thanks, Dr. Lee. I'm gonna click on that right now and save it. So listen, want to thank everybody for tuning in and being patient. We it looks like we held most of the people that had tuned in earlier
Thank you.
are still here. So
for
thank
sticking
you.
with us,
And,
Tune in
um,
next month.
come by the merchant's house, and put some money in the bird cage.
Yeah.
All right. And, that's Seabury right there. He's gonna keep an eye on you and make sure you do it. All right. So thanks, everybody. We're gonna click
night.
end and,
Thank you.
have a great weekend. Be safe.
Yeah, bye guys.
See you,
Bye.
Dr. Lee. Have a safe trip tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, Bob.